This is Edgar Wright's documentary about Sparks, about their extraordinary, century-straddling career, 25 albums, umpty thrumpty songs, and several film projects, some unrealized, some realized. And the documentary has an amazing array of interviewees. I mean, everyone from comedians to musicians to fans to presenters. And one of the things that is becomes clear very early on is that not only do all the people speaking in the documentary have all been fascinated by Sparks, and there's a line which is in the trailer, which is that all music is basically rearranged Sparks, but also that everybody had the same thing about struggling to define what they are, who they are, where do they come from, this whole thing about who on earth are this band. In fact, there's a thing which Flea says, again, this is in the trailer, says I saw them around all the time, and the thing was, who on earth are they? And I think that the genius of the documentary is that it manages to unpack and preserve the mystery at the same time. But here is a clip of those voices struggling to describe who or what Sparks are.
When I first discovered Sparks, I never thought of them as being American at all. I thought of them just being as, like, Sparks.
They're otherworldly.
I always thought Sparks were a British band.
They're the best British group ever to come out of America.
Je suis américain.
They are a total enigma to me. They are a band who you can look up on Wikipedia and know nothing.
Who the fuck are these guys?
Ron has a huge snow globe collection. We're like, oh, really?
It's quite special and odd.
If you try to describe them to people, it's like, what do they sound like? Sparks.
The work speaks for itself, so I don't have to know them.
All pop music is rearranged Vince Clarke and rearranged Sparks. That's the truth.
There we go. That's the great payoff line. So here's the thing. I mean, I think both you and I really enjoyed the film, and I think both you and I really enjoyed it, having been people who watched Sparks doing This Town Ain't Big Enough for Both of Us, on Top of the Pops back in the 1970s. And I mean, I do remember this really clearly, watching it, thinking, what? Who are they? Who's, the lead singer? Is that a boy? Is that a girl? Are they singing in French because I can't understand the lyrics? The guy sitting behind the piano, behind the keyboard, looks like Charlie Chaplin. The story that is told in the documentary is a apocryphal story, I'm sure, but that John Lennon rang up Ringo Starr and said, turn on the television, Mark Bolan is playing with Adolf Hitler.
And it's far too good a story, isn't it, really?
It's far too good a story. And the film is made by Edgar Wright, who is a very, very cinematic filmmaker, which sounds like, I know it sounds like a saying the same thing twice. But the point is that Edgar Wright's films are very kinetic. They've got a lot of energy, they've got a lot of wit, a lot of comedy in them. And one of the things that they have is a brilliant kind of pop music sensibility. You think, for example, of the scene in Shaun of the Dead when they're throwing albums at the zombies. You think of the Queen song kicking in. You think of Baby Driver and the way in which it uses, bell bottoms. You think of the way in which the band works all the way through Scott Pilgrim versus the World. I mean, this is where Edgar Wright lives. And the thing with Sparks is that, yes, they're a pop group or a rock group. I mean, they come from kind of art rock background. And then they have this kind of weird thing when that thing, as Paul Morley says, there. Of course, Paul Morley, as always, brilliantly pithy, says they're the best British band ever to come out of America. So then they have that, and then they have the disco years, the Giorgio Moroder stuff, and then the later stuff, and then there's all the film projects. The fact that, I always knew that they were in Roller Coaster, which is a terrible film, and I always wondered why Sparks are in there. But then there's this stuff about they were going to work with Jacques Tati on his film Confusion. There's the fact that the documentary leads up to the creation of Annette, which recently opened the Cannes Film Festival, which is the Sparks Brothers, collaboration with, I know they're not called the Sparks Brothers, that's a joke because he says that because they hate that title so much. Collaboration with Leos Carax, which opened the Cannes Film Festival. And when you have this much mythology, it takes a filmmaker like Edgar Wright to say, okay, we're going to go through everything. We're going to tell you everything in the same way that Alex Winter film, Zappa, did a brilliant job of leading me by the hand through Frank Zappa's career. But also, I think what he does is he makes a film of it. He makes an enjoyable, entertaining film that's every bit as witty, every bit as cinematic, every bit as slightly bonkers as the band themselves. And you mentioned this last time. There's a thing at the end which is, in case we've revealed too much, here are some things that may be true or may not be true, because it wants to keep the mythology rolling. And I love that quote about they're a band that you can look up on Wikipedia and know absolutely nothing.
Which is definitely true.
Definitely true. And I think that the real joy of this documentary, which is 2 hours 20 something minutes long, I mean, it's exhaustively researched. It's got great animations, like, for example, that story about John Lennon ringing Ringo Starr is animated by the guy who did the animations for Edith Piaf Said It Better Than Me, for the video for that from 2017. And it has this kaleidoscopic array of voices. Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols, Steve Jones from the Sex Pistols talking about Sparks. And I think, and this is the point where I think you and I will disagree, I think you could watch this knowing absolutely nothing about Sparks and find it really entertaining. And the reason I think that is because on numerous occasions while watching the film, I thought, this is a work of fiction. Even though I know that this is true, and there are things in it that are mythological and things in it that are apocryphal, the whole thing seems to be like a grand work of fiction cooked up. And it wouldn't have surprised me at any point if, I remember feeling the same thing when I was watching Searching for Sugar Man, which of course is based on a story, absolutely true story, although the story was kind of contorted for the documentary because the disappearance wasn't quite the disappearance that the documentary had made out. But you could watch, if you'd never heard of Sparks, you could watch the Sparks Brothers and go, somebody has made this up because this is just too bonkers to actually be true. And that's what I loved about it. And that's why I think it's a film that anyone could enjoy. I think your opinion is that it's brilliant, but for Sparks fans.
I think once it ticks past 90 minutes, it's probably for Sparks fans. I think everyone, it's an Edgar Wright movie, so it's going to be, of course, it looks fantastic. Their music is wildly entertaining, and it is an intriguing story. I think with pretty much so if you're not fully invested, I think as we click past 90, you have to be really devoted to the tale as they go through all the I think every album gets a mention, but so it's a slight variation, but I think 2 hours 20 is pushing it if you're not a fan. That's all.